Okay, council, I think we can go ahead and start. I think everybody's here. So council, in front of you, there is a letter that I received about 10:30 last night by email from Will Lawrence, the Chief of Staff for Governor Kelly. And it appears that we will not be having presentations from the two companies today. I indicated that this might be on the horizon yesterday. This council, as you know, was put together with in statute, and it was deliberately put together with all the interested parties for employees, labor unions, companies, legislators, and claimants. Unfortunately, the governor has chosen to circumvent this process. She has fought us every step of the way on this bill. She was against most of the things that were in it, and it was a heavy lift getting this bill passed. At the end of the day, she did sign it, but that's because it was unanimously passed. But believe me, she didn't want to. So this is her latest attempt to circumvent this process. And I have Jason Lung here from the revisor's office that we can ask him some questions. He can opine as to the letter and give us some advice on what we think we need to do going forward. I can tell you I've reached out to some of the companies, and they do want to present to us. Hopefully we'll get there, because I think that it is important that we all weigh in on this, all the interested parties, not just the governor. So with that, I'll call up Jason Long. Jason, did you get a chance to review this letter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have had a chance to review the letter you're referencing. As you may note, as you read the letter, there is no explicit statutory provision or regulation cited in the letter that clearly prohibits the vendors from coming and making presentations before the council. However, there is an RFP process and protocol that the Department of Administration follows through all their procurements, and they keep that fairly uniform as stated in the letter for the reasons stated there. So while we do not know of any statutory regulatory obstacle to having vendors come and make presentations in the midst of this RFP process, there are most likely some procedures that the Department of Administration would need to take in order to facilitate those presentations occurring in front of the council. And I'm not sure the extent to which those would be. That would be a question for the Department of Administration and their legal counsel as to what steps they would need to take in order to authorize those vendors to come and present in front of the council, whether that would be all the vendors who submitted proposals under the RFP as opposed to just selecting certain vendors. That might be the case. There are certainly best practices that I'm sure the DOA is aware of under the RFP process to maintain that transparency, that openness, and that fairness with respect to all the vendors who submitted proposals under that. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if Charles has anything to add for the benefit of the council on this issue.
Chairman, thank you. I would just to sort of echo your opening comments, Chairman, that HB 2196 certainly contemplates both in sections 8 and also in section 2 that the council is definitely a part of the procurement process.
Yes, and not only that, but the council has the duty to report to the LCC, and the LCC has the duty to release the funds and approve a vendor according to statute. And by the governor's actions today, she has further delayed this process, and there are tens of thousands of Kansans that have suffered this year that are watching this process that think that the governor actually cares. That has pretty much gone out the window at this point. So now we're going to delay this process further and not give them an answer. Heck, we could have made a decision today if had these two companies shown up. We do know that there are only two companies left. And we do know that these two companies have already presented to the administration and the Department of Labor and many other people. And so if there's some sort of protocol here, it has been broken already. So this is just a deliberate attempt to circumvent the process. This was a cowardly letter sent in the middle of the night, last night. We have been working on this all year. 3 months ago, we talked about having a presentation from two companies because we already knew 3 months ago there were only two companies. They had to present to the decision-making council first. Then they were going to come to us. And so we've been talking about this forever. I was told by the Department of Labor all along that they were going to show up, only to find out that the administration never contacted the two companies. We're not allowed to talk to them. We can't have any kind of negotiation with these companies. The Department of Labor told this council we were going to do this today. It didn't happen. And it didn't happen because of one person. I would point out to the council, if you look at our RFP, and we've talked about this RFP was put together at the last minute when this bill was in conference in a deliberate attempt to circumvent the process. And what she did by doing that, and I mean she, when I say she, I mean our governor. What she did when she did that was she handcuffed all these companies that responded, because we do not get the opportunity to talk to them because of this process and what she did. She knew this council was going to do a great job. Somehow, she didn't approve of it. So she did it her way, like she always does. So now we're in a position to where there's two companies left, and we don't even get to hear them. Kansans are not involved in the process. If you look at our RFP, that is 280 some pages long, and you look at some of these other RFPs out there from other states that are 19 pages long or 11 pages long for the same product, it begs the question, why was it so long? And why was it rushed? The word Texas is in there. It was cut and pasted. It was really rushed. She really wanted to throw a wrench in this process. And so I did some, and some of the other council members did some investigating, and we found an award letter from the state of Oregon for one of the four companies, Fast. One of the four companies that we know are one of the final four companies. We don't know who the final two company is, but I guarantee you one of them is Fast. Because if you read that letter, the award letter that's 28 pages long, and you see all the reasons why the state of Oregon chose that company, all of that stuff ended up in our RFP. So it's my contention that this process has been a joke all along, and that this governor wants to do business with one of her friends. And I bet if you dig deep enough, you'll find donations to PACs, donations to governors. I mean, who knows what the heck you find. I'm dumbfounded with this whole thing. I'll open it for questions. I've got quite a bit more to say, but let's, Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I have a different opinion, just for those listening online, that the governor and the administration has been supportive of coming up with a modernization project all along. And we did insert ourselves in, and we have the right to do so, as the chairman said, to get the people's voices, as we've been representing. I'm not interested in conjectures about donations to different gubernatorial things without proof. I'm not interested in saying that I have a different opinion, just putting this out there, than the chairman, in terms of the governor has been supportive of the administration, people coming in here and being transparent and coming up. I think that we are doing a good job when we bring the people's voice here as representatives and senators of our different organizations and stakeholders. and talk about what we do want in this process. The fact that they're raising an objection here as to opening ourselves up to potential lawsuits and risk that an unsuccessful bidder would potentially sue us for going outside the procurement process doesn't mean that we can't proceed with the same course of action. It merely means that we need to get some probably letters signed by the companies that they won't sue. I think that we want to see more about the solution. I think that the administration probably, when my communications, they want us to see things about the solution that are compelling about the different vendors. And if we have to have all four come in here, so be it. If that absolves us of any kind of risk, I think risk aversion is not a bad thing. And while this might be a stumbling block, I'm familiar with the processes of procurement. This is not a showstopper at all. And the people have heard us deliberate on the things that we wanted, and they've come to me and said, we need some more things. So I don't think we're stopping the process. I think that this is just something that the council can deal with. We've got a lot of different, we've got the fraud detection audit that we're proceeding with, and we've had some successful conversations yesterday. This is merely a demonstration for us to kind of review some of the functionality. It shouldn't be a be-all, end-all event at all. Understanding that the chair is angry about the stop in the process, but I don't think it warrants this level of accusations. Understand that you probably do, but I certainly don't think so. And I think that we can proceed in a fashion that we can get these vendors in here. We just have to have a couple things conditionally put in place, and we can keep proceeding down this path that's in a parallel path with everything else that's been proceeding so far. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to say those words.
Thank you for the comments, Senator, and I agree with you that this could have been handled differently, and it will be handled differently going forward, and we will hear from all four companies if that's what it takes. I agree with all that. But where the hell was all that in August when all of the administration was in front of us and their attorney was in front of us, and they said there would be no problems after we narrow it down to 2 companies, and those 2 companies will come here. And we asked many different times, and that was the plan until 10:30 last night, when you receive a letter stating that, oh, we lied to the Department of Labor. They think somebody's going to show up tomorrow. We never contacted them. This wasn't a last-minute decision that happened at 10:30 last night. This has been a decision all along, and they waited till 10:30 last night to tell us. And I apologize to the council today for having to be here for nothing. I don't want to be here. Today is my mother's birthday, and it's probably her last birthday. And I'm up here trying to do the work of Kansans, just like the rest of you. We all gave up a bunch of time today, an entire day for this. And to me, it's an important day. But I came here. We didn't have to come here. Had this been communicated to us properly, we would have been able to have this meeting with the companies, but it wasn't. Any other questions or comments? Senator Tyson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You brought up some excellent points, especially the fact that the RFP was written in such a rush and so poorly written, and then to find out that it has language from a reward proposal from another state is extremely disheartening and concerning for the state of Kansas. I got to tell you, to get the letter at 10:30 p.m. did not allow you, Mr. Chairman, or this committee to take proper action and to delay. Instead, it is an expense incurred by the taxpayers because we are here, and it could have been avoided. And by delaying this effort, has demonstrated that she is absolutely putting politics over policy. Because, as you said, when is the last time we met? In July, or the first time even. This was brought up in July. August, it was discussed again. There's no reason that at 10:30 p.m., September 8th, that you get a letter disregarding your schedule for this committee. I just got to tell you, I'm extremely upset, and I think everybody on this council should be. I'm not going to tell you how to be, and it's your choice, but the fact that our time and taxpayer money was disrespected in this manner demonstrates that this is not a team effort. This is our team, the Tiger team, against the governor's office. And that's extremely disappointing to Kansans, and it should be to all of us.
Any further questions or comments? Mr. Hayes.
Chair, this is just a quick question for the gentleman. Are we, the last statement in this letter says, therefore, we would recommend that the UI Modernization Council not hold such demonstrations. It's recommended, but to Senator Pittman's point, in your opinion, if we were to invite all four in, would that absolve that concern of it?
I think there might be some additional steps that need to be taken by the Department of Administration, since it is their RFP, in order to make the presentations happen, in addition to inviting all four vendors to make presentations. But more specifically to your point, I think the presentations could occur in front of the council if those steps are taken in order to clear some of the concerns that are expressed in the letter to Senator Pittman's response. I think there's maybe some documents that could be executed or some authorizations that could be made on behalf of the Department of Administration to allow the presentations to go forward.
I would suspect that if DOA truly wants to be a partner in this process and best serve Kansans across the board, that would happen. Just from my historical perspective in the UI arena, I got involved in UI reform initiatives, trying to find efficiency gains, effectiveness, looking at tax side. Back in 2005, I was very involved in the early reforms in 13 and 15, have been heavily involved in this process this year. I just feel like timing has been used in the administration's benefit over and above this council, and really tried to circumvent the usefulness and the effectiveness of this council from the get-go. This bill was being heard throughout the session this year. The Senate came back and unanimously voted on it on March 31st, and the proposal was led on April 1. And I felt like the writing was on the wall, so it was rushed. There was sloppy language in it. It was copy and pasted from my perspective. And I just felt like our hands were tied before this started. As primary stakeholders in the UI system, this council has thousands of Kansans represented with the three representatives from the employee groups here. There's 1,000+ employers represented with the employer reps that are here. And I feel like our voice is being silenced, and that the stakeholders that are ultimately users and customers, and from the business community that ultimately funds this system, we're going to be silenced again. This just seems like a replay from the 2000s under Governor Sebelius and Secretary Jim Garner at the time, where we squandered $50+ million in an upgrade effort that didn't yield anything, because we've seen how the system performed in the Great Recession as well as the pandemic this time. This is a travesty if this council does not have a voice in the selection and the process to represent employees or claimants across the state or the business community. We are being silenced, and we're going to be stuck with a bureaucratic system that we're going to have zero voice in. It's extremely frustrating and disappointing.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I have a question for Revisor Reimer. I've looked in the statute. I've read the statute on the procurement that's cited in the letter, but the one in our UI bill that created this council, I haven't seen the language where it says we're supposed to, I know we're supposed to give the LCC a recommendation, but I haven't seen where we're any way in charge of procurement of this. Is there specific language we're talking about?
No, certainly there's not language that indicates the council is in charge of procurement.
I guess my point on this and reading it, I don't see where the statute, the bill that was passed, has anything for us to be dealing with the procurement. Now, I understand the demonstrations. I understand, just like Senator Pittman made, I think that there are ways, and I agree with Revisor Long on this, that there are ways to do this. But I read the procurement statute issued in the letter. I don't know if anyone else on the committee did. It's a blind process. I mean, I understand where there's issues in how we have to do this. I think you do have to invite all four bidders. I think you have to hide all names. I think you can't let it be known who it comes from, which we were told in July when we met that those were the issues. I mean, I think to say that this move is political is off the wall, in my opinion, because I don't think it undermines the council one bit. We still have the ability to recommend modernization. We still have the ability to say what we want to see in the new system. To Mr. Hayes's point that we have employers and employees represented, you're right. That's what our council's for. We say what features we'd like to see in the system. Once the bidder is chosen, we go and tell them which features we want to implement. You know, to say that them not being able to present to us today undermines the council, I think is a little offhand, because just from my legal perspective, I don't think we legally could have done it today. I think that it's a month or two process to do it. I mean, it even talks about it. We have to give public notice if we're going to do the demonstrations. I mean, there's a lot of working parts here that I don't know that we could have really pulled off. Now, who's to say it couldn't have been done earlier? I don't know. Obviously, committee members aren't really in on the conversations of the setting up of these meetings and how everything goes. I don't know how long this process was going on. I don't know when the first ask was or anything like that. But I think that there is a process we have to abide by. I think legally we have to abide by it. If not, you're looking at a big world of hurt. And, you know, we're talking about taxpayers and taxpayers' dollars. Last thing I want is my taxpayer dollars to go fund legal suits. It drives me crazy when governmental entities enter into things like this that they know full well is going to end up in court. Now, I'm not saying this would, I'm using that as an example, but I think that it is possible, to Senator Pittman's point. I just think we have to make certain choices and certain points made. And I don't know how we would have, how a demonstration can be done blindly. I think that's a much longer conversation that has to happen, because I think it has to be done blindly to be able to do it legally. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Revisor Long, can it be done legally, in your opinion, without, with having the companies in here presenting product demonstration only, no trade secrets, no costs, just a product demonstration from a company?
Again, I think there is a way to have the presentations done as the council has requested. It just may take some additional steps on the part of the Department of Administration in handling, administrating the RFP and the vendors who have submitted proposals.
Unfortunately, no one is here from the Department of Administration. Again, I don't see the Secretary of Labor here either. And so that kind of tells you where people stand on this. But let me go on to Senator Pittman had something else to say.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think I understand the frustration with the late notice, and maybe, I don't know, the discussions that were had and why they have, I can't sit here and defend them. It's not my job. It's not what I'm interested in. But I do know that we can move forward from this. I think that there are options here that have been outlined. I think we could probably look at that process. It's one of the challenges that comes from a committee that's an oversight committee, and that we're not actually executing these things. I don't know if we need a motion that would say, hey, look, direct someone, I don't know who, but maybe the revisers to find out how we could do this. And I think we're going to learn a lot from those demonstrations to understand the differences inside of what can actually come from these things. And I'm interested in it myself, as long as we can make sure that these companies don't sue us and or don't have the opportunity to, and that we can, you know, keep it a fair process. I do think that an RFP process was put in place, and we looked at Texas, which has a massive unemployment insurance system. I don't think that's a detriment to the process to look at other states. It's a common thing. And there's a lot of functionality that was looked at for that. So I don't think the sheer volume should be an insult to the process or anybody who's executed that RFP out for this. It's the quality that we should be thinking about, and whether it incorporates what this council and our voices, making sure that the quality of the RFP and the responses and the decisions are aligned with what we have expressed during our committee work here. I think that's more important. So I don't know if you need a motion for that, Mr. Chair. If you want one, I'd be willing to make one that says, hey, let's direct somebody to look into how we can get this done.
I don't think we need a motion for that. They've been working on it since August, and I know that that our revisors have been talking to the Department of Administration, and until last night, there were going to be no issues if we had a presentation that was public without any trade secrets, and we didn't discuss cost. I mean, everybody knows. So all 4 companies that are involved, the 2 that are no longer involved know they're not involved. Of course, they haven't been told because the governor's office doesn't like to deliver negative messages, at least not in person. They haven't been told, but they could figure it out because there have been presentations from the 2 remaining companies, and everybody knows that. So, hey, guys, if you haven't come in and given a presentation, you're out. Sorry. Sorry we didn't communicate after you did all that work to send in an RFP. So we didn't give you a chance to even come present. I'll open this council to that. We'll hear from all 4 companies. Actually, we'll hear from the 2 companies that aren't remaining if we could figure out who they are. I'm sure they'd be happy to come in and try to give us a presentation, especially when the RFP was written for 1 company. And it's obvious. And that 1 company, by the way, is having all kinds of problems in Michigan. ID theft and all kinds of mistakes. I mean, Google it, man. It's terrible. But this would have been an opportunity for that company to clear those issues up, but we don't even get to ask those questions. This thing's being crammed down our throat, and it is what it is. So, I mean, it's just, anybody else have something to say? Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd probably go along the same lines of Senator Pittman. I would authorize the reviser to send a letter to the Department of Administration, seeing how we could work through, getting these presentations and making sure the state's protected from lawsuits and from the vendors. I don't have a problem setting through all 4. They took the time to bid. I don't have a problem sitting here looking at all, their presentations. We might actually learn something from the bottom 2 that we want added. And so on that, I don't know if, I heard you don't want a motion, but I would be there to second it to give.
Senator Pittman, make your motion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we work with both the, we direct the revisers to work with the administration lawyers to find out what are the minimum processes we need and maybe documents we need to have in terms of the format to alleviate us of any kind of a lawsuit risk, or at least have minimal risk of that in the procurement process, so that we can proceed forward with as blind a product demonstration from either the top 2 or the top 4 vendors that are out there.
Any discussion on that?
We have discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Tyson.
Plenty of discussion, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, this was a request that was made earlier, and I find it interesting that a motion is going to make the difference on the outcome. Because, and for the gentleman that said that this isn't political, our agenda was posted Friday morning for this committee. You could have received a letter Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all day, but instead you receive a letter at 10:30 p.m. Wednesday evening when it's too late to make a change to the committee. Now, the gentleman that said it is online. It took an hour or 2 out of his day. He can disconnect easily. The rest of us, we drove in. We committed to be here. This is a priority for us. I understand other committee members had other obligations and chose not to be here. But this is a major priority for the state of Kansas. And it is extremely disappointing that you would receive that letter at 10:30 p.m. I can't fathom why the governor's office would choose to do that. I know that nobody here speaks for them. They're not here to defend it. But that in itself is disrespectful also. Mr. Chairman, I understand the motion. I think it's negligible. I don't know what authority it brings other than the chairman making the same request. I do appreciate all the research of the revisers. And I do understand that it has to be so that we don't know which vendor is presenting at the time, which is very difficult to do. But our hands were tied. The governor chose to put that RFP out knowing full well that this legislation was coming. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for all your work and for your efforts in trying to get the best system possible for all Kansans.
So, yeah, I agree with all that, and we've stated that this has been public all along. We're very transparent. I think I would make a substitute motion here that we ask the Secretary of Administration and Rick Beatty to come explain to the committee what exactly needs to be done to allow a transparent process to take place and allow this council to weigh in on a very important decision for all of Kansans. That motion is seconded by Mr. Hayes. Any discussion on the substitute motion? Mr. Hayes.
Just a follow-up comment about the transparency. And the substitute motion, I would definitely be fully in support of. To Senator Tyson's point, the original motion, I don't know that it does anything more than just offer another charade in this game. But for me, as a representative of businesses and also employees, because as a business owner, you've got employees as well. But for me, it sounds that the state is more concerned about getting sued rather than getting to the best product or service for all Kansans across the board. And that would be utilizing a fully transparent system or process to ensure that all stakeholders are served in that process. Just yesterday in the Spark Committee, Lieutenant Governor David Tolan had stated, transparency means showing up where people are and making sure that they've got a chance to be heard in ways that work for them. Transparency, as used in business context, is operating in such a way that is easy for others to see what actions are performed. Transparency implies openness, communication, and accountability. That's the purpose of this council. And we're being side-skirted on this, and we're not having a voice in this process. And if you want to use Lieutenant Governor's words, the people are here. And this is the council that was stood up for the people, so come and talk to us. I fully support the substitute motion.
Senator Pittman, then Senator Olson, and it looks like Jake Miller wants to weigh in again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't need to get bogged down on this. On the original motion, I'll just make a comment that the reason that we make a motion as a committee is to express the will of the committee, not just the will of the chairman. Chairman is here to facilitate things.
We'll take a vote on that, and we'll see what the will is, okay?
Exactly. That's why we make motions as a committee, is to make an agreement and a vote. And that's what the point is, versus having a chairman say something to somebody and make that the will of the committee. It's just the way the process works. And it's my turn at the second motion is about bringing somebody in from the Secretary of the Department of Labor in to tell us how we can make this happen properly. And it sounds like we will trust the department. The first motion has to do with the lawyers working out specifically and moving forward with specific actions of how we can move forward in this process to get this done. The second motion, the substitute motion, appears to be, let's bring in the secretary, ask her these series of questions about how she would proceed, and put another step in this process, which doesn't need to be there. I understand the anger of some folks on this committee. As the senator to my right, Senator Tyson said, I'm not here to tell you how to feel. And this is about transparency to the vendors. about the process and about us moving forward with the correct steps so that we can have these people come out here, not sit us through a series of other discussions about what other people think we should do to then do the thing that we need to do. It seems like the secondary motion will slow the process down. It's not an insult to anybody. It's just that why don't we just go ahead and make the original motion, get rid of the secondary motion, and move forward with this process and go ahead and make the use of the rest of our day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jake Miller, or I'm sorry, Senator Olson, then Jake Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple questions. Jason or staff, have you communicated with Department Administration and asked them if there's anything we need to get sealed up so we're not sued? I mean, I would have thought that this is probably privileged and confidential information when it comes to the committee, so I would have thought we probably would have asked that question already. Has that been asked?
I am under the understanding that the revisor, Gordon Self, has had some conversations with the Department of Administration. I don't know what the content of those discussions were, if they discussed any specific actions that would need to be taken. I think that's a follow-up conversation that if it's the will of the council, we can certainly contact the Director of Procurement and the Chief Legal Counsel for the Department of Administration and talk more specifically about what actions need to occur in order to make these presentations happen in front of the council.
I definitely think this letter definitely come kind of late to notify us what they were going to do. I would have liked to seen that earlier. I think everybody on the committee would. But I think I don't have a problem having them here at the next meeting and let them explain what happened, but I think you've got to get the ball rolling. If you're going to wait till the next meeting and then start, Jason and these guys can draft the letter today. That's going to take time. These companies are going to want certain things in place. This is our proprietary information, and if any way any of it gets out, any aspect, they're going to sue the state for a lot of money, and they're going to want some protections in place, or they should. If it was me, I would. But by taking this motion, you're actually going to delay the process. You could take the original motion and add for them to come in at the next meeting and explain what they did, start the paper process, and get the disclosures in place for the next meeting. Make them be here. And so, I guess I don't know why we would take the substitute motion, because now we're going to wait until they come. And then when they explain to us why they did it, then we're going to start the process of getting all the disclosures signed. How long is that going to be? A month. So now we got 2 months before we actually see the presentations. I don't know. I'm not going to support the substitute motion. I would support making a substitute motion, adding they come to the original motion. Thank you.
Jake Miller.
First, I do want to apologize to the committee about me not being there in person. I believe Senator Tyson made that point. I was exposed to COVID on Tuesday, so I chose to try to protect the committee by not showing up in person. But I have been at every other meeting in person, so I just wanted to make that note. Besides that, I wholeheartedly agree with Senator Olson on this. I think that there's a way to merge the two motions. I think if you go with the substitute motion, all we're going to do is have them come in and talk to us about how it can be possible. Then we're going to go back to making the first original motion at that meeting. And so we're just delaying the process even more. So I wholeheartedly agree with Senator Olson.
Mr. Oswald.
I'm asking this question and maybe, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking this question and maybe I just need some edification. I've been through a lot of RFPs and I've signed a lot of non-disclosure documents and they tend to be pretty broad. I mean, I'm assuming that during the RFP process, when they presented to other governmental entities, that they had some form of non-disclosure, that nobody was going to share proprietary information outside the council, et cetera. Would that be an accurate statement?
Not knowing how the department handled those presentations in-house, I can't speak specifically to what protocols were followed, but given the contents of this letter, yes, I think it would be a safe presumption that the sealed bid protocols were followed and carried out those presentations. I don't know if the deputy secretary could add to that or not, but I think that's a safe presumption.
Deputy Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Oswald, the demonstrations that occurred for agency subject matter experts, every individual that participated in that was given a non-disclosure agreement from the Department of Administration, which had to be signed and returned to them before we could move forward. So yes, your assumption was correct.
So would it not be applicable here, since I'm assuming that this is, again, these non-disclosure agreements tend to be very broad. They are written so that they cover everybody under the sun that could possibly be exposed to this information. I'm assuming it says something along the lines of the state of Kansas and everybody under the sun who lives in the state of Kansas. Why can't we have something that we sign that says we're not going to disclose this information and let's get this on the road? I mean, this seems to me that this is being bogged down in minutia that, I mean, for crying out loud, nobody here wants to, do anything wrong. We just want to get this process going. I've got several hundred clients who've been exposed to this nonsense for 18 months. They just want this fixed. They don't care how it gets fixed. They're paying attention to this process. They want a good, reliable process for all the parties involved. If I have to sign something that says I won't divulge what I see and hear, then I'll do that. But it seems like to me this process is just being bogged down and there's got to be a simpler solution, for crying out loud. I mean, that's all I have to say.
Thanks for those comments. And yes, all of that has been discussed. We've offered that during the discussions with the revisers, that if we need to do that, we would do that. But all this council was going to do was get a public, because I want to be as transparent as we can. I want to make sure that all Kansans can hear these presentations, and there has not been ever an issue with that, including when the lawyers for the administration were in our room in August. There was not issue with that. We are looking only for a presentation of what is already public knowledge that many of you have worked with on their platforms. How does it work? And what are the capabilities? The Department of Labor and the procurement team signed those disclosure statements because of the companies released and delved down into a lot of security issues and information that's not public and trade secrets, so that they could discuss that without those getting out. And we offered to go ahead and have the council sign a non-disclosure, even though we were going to just get something that's already public knowledge that many of us have worked with already. And so that's why the substitute motion is to bring the people in front of us that all of a sudden changed their mind at 10:30 last night and ask them, what the heck? I mean, this was all done. This has nothing to do with disclosure of secrets or being sued. Oswald, Mr. Oswald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In interest of time, though, I think that, I understand the dual motions, but I think combining the motions are going to be the best interest of our time and effort, because if we delay, I'm assuming the procurement process is going to continue. And if we allow multiple meetings to occur that just add to this process, we're only hurting our own cause, in my opinion. I think we need to move this along as fast as we possibly can. Now, you may tell me that there's some form of parliamentary requirement here is something that I'm unaware of, and but from a business person, I believe in being pragmatic, and I'm thinking we need to push this along as fast as we can with as few meetings and as few steps as we possibly can. That's my comment.
All right, so I think that we're in a trick bag here that we shouldn't be in. And so, with the permission of the second, I'm going to withdraw my substitute motion and make another substitute motion. Senator Tyson.
Mr. Chairman, you wouldn't have to do that. You could dispose of the substitute motion and then they could restate their motion again to expedite the process. But if you want to withdraw, that's fine too.
I'm going to withdraw the substitute motion with his permission, and he said the second has no problem with that, and I will make another substitute motion. I don't know how this works exactly, but I know does that work? Yes, okay. So the substitute motion would be to have the revisors work with their attorneys to expedite a position in order to get the demonstration from at least the two final companies, if not all four. I think we should give all four of them a chance, but however that needs to happen. And that the Secretary of Administration and Rick Beatty come to committee to explain what happened, what changed, and why the late notice, why the delay in this process. Seconded by Senator Pittman. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All against say no. Motion passes. Any further discussion? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have tentative schedule for next week on my calendar. That must not be accurate then.
We need to come back to answer any questions that are on our outstanding RFP for the audit process. And so those are due on the 16th, is that correct? 15th? Close of business on the 14th. And so I plan to come back on the 16th and possibly the 17th, given if we can get demonstrations from anybody. And there are other companies that want to come give us a presentation, so we'll get presentations so that we can get more information on modernization and how it works. Hopefully it'll be from the two companies that we're still considering, but if not, we'll have presentations.
So we are meeting the 16th and the 17th.
16th and tentatively 17th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the agenda, are we planning to have the Department of Administration next week, based off the previous motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for clarification, Mr. Chairman.
And before we close, I just want to point out that there is no ill will between the council, or at least the chair of the council, and the Department of Labor or the Department of Administration. I think that it's been clear from the beginning that this was a transparent process for all involved. And I commended the Secretary of Labor for putting herself on this council in an attempt to be as transparent as possible. Unfortunately, that was the day that we talked about the breach and the hack that happened, that we lost the ID of several Kansans, and we don't know how many. That discussion happened in a transparent way on that day. And I commended her for being there for that. Unfortunately, that was the end of that. She had to withdraw herself because of the possible too much transparency. Since then, the Department of Labor has been still very transparent, and the Deputy Secretary answers our questions as fully and as knowledgeable, sometimes too long, too-winded, but but he does an excellent job of explaining every single detail that we need as a council to make good, solid decisions, and I commend him for that. And it's unfortunate that this administration is doing its best to pit us against each other, I guess. So I do want to point out that it is not an issue with the transparency of the departments. It is an issue with the transparency of this governor. And I apologize to all of Kansans that we have to go through all of this. Just ask you to hang on. We've only got one more year left of this. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and the light is a bright one, and we'll get to it. So with that, I'll adjourn. Thank you.